we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means, on infiltration instead of invasion, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. There is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it.
All right, welcome to episode 109 of the Abuse Hour. It is I, your host, Coffee Long, coming to you unsupervised, unmedicated, and an unchecked threat to society. All right, man. So, it hasn't been quite a week, I don't know. I don't really pay attention to what the hell's going on, but feeling more or less refreshed after a quasi-health scare dick dance. I got more dick dancing to do, but at least for the most part, like, the major concerns are out of the way, and I ain't fucking dying anytime in the foreseeable future. I'll be here for fucking ever. I'll be here all week. Anyway, dude, I don't want to say, there's so much to talk about, so much time. Like, pretty much everything that I've seen, news-wise is pretty much the same silly bullshit that it's been for a little while. I did see one thing that interested me, and I can't honestly tell if, these are the kinds of things that are, like, absolute bullshit. I can't tell if this is something that is being hidden behind a smokescreen of other nonsensical bullshit, or if this is something that just straightforward happened and nobody really pays attention to it because of all the other nonsensical things that have gone on. But I did see one quick piece about how the Doge, how does one say? I prefer Doge, but whatever. Kind of like you would like see a dog and you're like, hey, Doge. Because I thought that was kind of the idea behind the Doge meme. Anyway, I digress. So there's the Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency type thing is alleged to have uncovered a deal whereby some government officials were putting in travel reimbursement claims, and somehow, presumably quite by accident, a box was checked whereby this would become a recurring payment. So this was talking about one instance, and I don't know how factual this is. This could be bullshit, but what I saw was a reference that a certain Michael Obama, you know who I mean, the guy with the big dick, had put in a travel reimbursement claim for $121,000. And somehow, quite by accident, I'm sure, this recurring box got checked. So this guy was getting this payment every fucking month, 120 grand a month. So to me and you, 120 grand, man, it's mad money. It's crazy money. But, when you're talking about the billions you're going to send to this country and the billions you're going to send to that country over there, and then the trillions you're going to dedicate to this line of funding and so on, what's 121 grand a month? Like, it's small enough to never even notice. But what I can tell you is that kind of thing, how can I say, dude? It's like Al Capone getting pinched for income tax evasion. Like, you could say, yeah, I did this, but this shit right here, it has fucking teeth, man. I know in the military, like, it's something very easy to pinch somebody on, and then it's very fucking hard to walk off. And I do think that, like, yeah, sure, there's the better than average chance that it becomes, better than average shit, the 99.99% chance that it becomes like, oh, it wasn't my fault, I didn't check that box, somebody else must have done that wasn't my fault. So, it's not like Mike Obama is ever going to see a day of prison time or ever going to get called on the carpet for any of this kind of shit. But what I do think is interesting is I think this is just like the Eric Adams type thing, where I know that these hats will get these diversity Americans, these basketball Americans, by the nuts by giving them something that a smart person just would not take. It's the old saying, like, don't take what somebody gives you like this. If somebody's not your friend, don't take what they're just fucking handing you. I mean, it's like Matt Getz being introduced to some hot girl who turns out to be 17. Like, dude, what were you fucking thinking, man? Meeting some girl that's this guy introduced you to. I don't give a fuck if she looks 25, man. Like, don't fucking take what these people hand you. And now you find yourself where you find yourself. But I think this is quite probably the same thing. And I would have no doubt that this is the situation with a lot of these people. You know, when you start talking about this Epstein type shit where, like, you got handed something. Like, you got handed something that you know you shouldn't have had, that you know was out of your fucking league, that you know, like, oh, I hope nobody who doesn't like me sees this. What the fuck are you thinking, man? And now you take it, and now you're like, ah, shit. Now they come to you later, and they're like, hey, man, just so you know, this came up, but I could protect you, bro. I just need to make sure that me and you always stay on the same page. Cool. Oh, yeah, shit. I get what you're saying. I do think some of these basketball Americans probably don't have the good sense to look at a situation like that and understand the underlying meaning of, like, hey, dipshit, do what I tell you to do or else. This is going fucking public. Big Mike, I will imagine, probably had some fucking team of advisors, or you know what, this could be like the warning shot across the bow, assuming this is factual in any way, shape, or form. But something like this, actually this small, could be like a warning shot across the bow to say, like, look, stupid, we have you 10 different fucking ways. Start doing what we ask you to do or fucking else. And with these characters, like, yeah, the Obongos are not still in office, but these people, I mean, you pulled 90% of the basketball American vote. Like, you have fucking influence. And even though everybody knows that, like, these people didn't do no favors for blacks. I mean, Mike Obama is black, and, you know, whatever, Barry Soetoro is he's the mulatto, he's the dirty mulatto. But this guy didn't do anybody any favors. But these are not the smartest fucking people in the world either. So either way, it's going to be like, yeah, they want you to go out there and say this. They want you to support that. You know, probably what? Support fucking more immigration. Get pissed off at Thomas Massey. Do me a solid and move to Kentucky so we could displace, you know, the Massey crowd or whatever. Some kind of thing. Who the fuck knows? But it does seem like the machinations never end, right? So I've noticed a couple things, man, and I wanted to kind of revisit this because I've seen some discussion, and largely fruitful discussion, but it does seem like the kind of thing, especially, how can I say, the way that things are going, the direction things are going, like, it's very much, the scene has changed, I'd say, very much over just the last year, definitely over the last 2 or 3 years, whereby things that we used to have to hide, you know, like in Telegram, to even discuss, like, you can't say this shit out and about, out in public, you can't just talk about this stuff. But now it is very much mainstream. So the idea of the JQ, this is out there, and it's getting discussed on your Rogan, on your Matt Walsh, on all of these platforms, and in some cases being discussed in a way that's like by omission. Like, we all know what we're talking about. When somebody says that, like, yeah, a country in the Middle East has undue influence in American government, nobody thinks this is in reference to, like, fucking Yemen, you know, or fucking Sri Lanka is, you know, unduly influencing, you know, American politics. Djibouti, you know, like these Qataris again. But nobody thinks that. Everybody knows what, you know, country in the Middle East we're all talking about. But it's going mainstream. And I think the thing with that is that, like we all know, once it goes mainstream, like, the only way you can keep a lid on this, you know, we all know, is that you just don't talk about it. Because once you start talking about it, and there's, as we've all seen, as we can all attest, there are many avenues to arrive at the conclusions that we have all arrived at. But this is one string in particular that when you start pulling this thing, you're going to get here, dude, and you're going to get here quick. So I think there's got to be, with these people, there's got to be a situation where they take some sort of action. So they tried, you know, they tried the discrediting thing, and I think those were last-ditch attempts. They tried the distraction thing where it's, no, you know, it's actually Qatar. That obviously didn't fly. So what it looks like they're trying now is a little bit of explaining away and a little bit of straw manning. And just in the last week, I've seen two I don't know how high profile the first instance is, but the second instance, this Joe Rogan situation, this interview with Daryl Cooper, this, along with the likes of the YouTube video that got posted in the chat, in the Telegram chat, t.me/rant room. But this kind of thing, I think this is just probably one, and I mean, it's not like they're, doing one at a time over here. They're throwing as much shit as they can at the wall and seeing what's going to fly. This does seem to be, if anything, what could be a fairly effective attempt when you're trying to dissuade people who, I don't want to say smart, maybe mid-witted people who think they're a little smarter than they actually are. And here's kind of what I'm talking about. So I want to talk through like these two items. I want to talk through the YouTube video that was posted. And I'll tell you this, I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched about half of it because I think it's like 25 minutes long. But really, you can get everything you need to know out of this in the first, 3, 4, 5 minutes. You're going to get everything you need to know. The rest is fucking nuance. And, you're going to come away. If you know what you're looking at, you're going to understand what's happening. But this thing was called Inside, I think it was Inside Dixieland Hammerskins. And it's about this guy that was a former 1.0 guy. So if you're listening, and, I'll tell you this, dude, if you're listening and you're not completely familiar with all the terminology and the nuance and the memes and shit that's inherent in, bunny ears, our thing, I'm going to tell you that, like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to start from square one with you. I'll apologize for that. I do realize that, maybe making a podcast, it's smart to approach things like, this could be somebody's very first ever listen ever to anything that relates to, white collective concerns. But I'll tell you this, this is not the podcast for you, dude. I'm not doing like the baby step thing, because that's the idea of talking the same stuff over and over and over again for the guy who's never heard it before, or doesn't want to believe what he's heard before and wants to say like, but what about, man, this is not that, dude. This is for people that are a little bit farther ahead and understand a few things, and we're building on that. So I'll talk through this thing. If a lot of it doesn't make much sense to you, I'll apologize. Go and look at a few other things. And I always hate when people say, go read this shit, go read that shit. I hate reading that, and I hate saying that, but it is what it is, man. Get up to speed on some of the basic concepts of white collective interests, and then, come back and revisit the things that we talk about here. But so this Inside Dixie Hammerskins, or whatever the hell, this is this guy that appears to be maybe like late Gen X type guy. And he's talking about basically his life as 1.0 Dixie Hammerskin type thing. And like the 1.0 thing, if you are a young dude, like I had a very, very small visibility on this growing up in Southern California, and you didn't really see too much of this. And I'll tell you, like I've said before, dude, like life was really weird before, looking back, before the internet. Like you couldn't have, you didn't have a way to get really solid information, or to weigh a lot of different perspectives, or to collect a lot of ideas and like, well, what does this guy say about it? Like you had whatever you could run into in a day. Like you have what you see in the newspaper. You have what your friends are telling you. Like that's it, dude. That's fucking it. So like that's your reality. And when you say worldview, like as far as that is the whole fucking world. So when I was in high school, there was a 1.0 dude, and he wasn't even a skin, dude. I don't know what you would call this guy. He was like a punk rock kid, and he wore all the punk rock shit and wore the Doc Martens and like some plaid pants and shit, but he had like this weird kind of greasy hair. I wouldn't say he was a mod, because I seen mods. Like mods were like kind of this gay English thing that was like, I'm overdressed for my station in life, I'm a little hip, I'm a little, whatever. It wasn't that. But it's like a punk rock dude. I think the dude wore like some eyeliner and shit sometimes. So I was kind of like, this dude's fucking weird. Like weird as shit to me, like in the 80s, like I'm a teenage kid in the 80s. I got no exposure to that shit. But I seen this dude cruising around once, And he hands me this flyer, dude, and I gotta look for this fucking flyer, but it was like 1.0 as fuck, dude. And like in retrospect, it's almost nostalgic. Like even for like proper Zoomers, you know, in our thing, like this thing would be like nostalgic as fuck. Where like it's this working man looking dude, and it's like it's a line drawing, like just the black and white line drawing type illustration. And it's this working man looking dude, and he's like rolling up, you know, some work sleeves on his work shirt. And in the big letters across the top, the white man built America. And I remember seeing it, and I was like there was something about, like I didn't properly understand propaganda, like at all. Like I really enjoy political propaganda of every stripe, honestly. Communist propaganda is some of like it's like some of the most interesting shit I think you'll see, because they have to rely so heavily on the art, because they can't rely on, you know, real life or true facts or anything like that. But like propaganda to me at the time, like I didn't understand. Like it looks like a picture, but I feel like there's more to this. You know, like I don't fucking know what I'm looking at. But I'm looking at it, I just stood there like staring at it for a while. But then the other part of it was like, this is something that runs so counter to everything I've been told in my, you know, entire, you know, 10 plus a couple years of being alive. You know, like this runs so counter. Like this is like, bro, you're like excluding like black people and like Mexicans, and like this is the kind of thing that like these people like picked on Jews and stuff. Dude, don't you know what happened to those people? Like this is crazy. I don't understand it. And it was really wild to me, man. And I just kind of stood there looking at it for a while. But this was kind of like my very, very first introduction to like 1.0 propaganda. And it's, I guess in retrospect, I mean, I'd have to say like it's very ham-fisted, like very clumsy. And not to take away, these are people doing like the level best that they fucking could, I'm sure. But I mean, especially compared to like, you know, the way that we convey ideas now, like this is not going to convince anybody of anything. Like you're running straight into a brick wall with something like this. Like there's no nuance, there's no easing into it. Like this is, I don't know, dude, it was wild. But that was really about as good as I think I ever saw in terms of 1.0, like actual pro-white propaganda. But now kind of looking back at the 1.0 scene, you know, like what is this? Like I think it was, I mean, I'd have to almost say that it was very much like a lobster trap, you know, where like you get in, but there's all these mechanisms to keep you from ever getting out. You can only go forward down this one path. And I do remember seeing a while back, I can't remember, it was like American Nazi Party or something like this. And the guy that was actually running it was Jewish. And you think, why the fuck is this, dude? Because obviously, man, like you're going to get in here, no one's ever going to listen to you. You're going to be stuck by yourself, dude. You're going to just run in circles and fucking die in here. It's a fucking lobster trap. But looking back at like the 1.0 scene as a whole, you know, like guys like this guy, what the fuck was his name? Like Arno or some shit. Like it's, you know, I don't know what the fuck is that, dude. Like, you know, some kind of Swedish name. I bet my ass, his real name probably ain't Arno. It's probably something else. It's probably like Jerry or some shit. And like Jerry don't sound very cool. Like, how about Arno, and put the little O over top of the A, you know, so like everybody knows how runic you are or whatever. So this guy is talking about his 1.0 experience, and he's talking about the drinking, he's talking about the drug use, he's talking about the violence, talking about just fucking with people, beating the shit out of people. He's talking about, he had like knuckle tattoos, and one of them was, what was it? I think he was like a swastika on his middle finger of like his right hand. He's like, yeah, bro, so I could like flip somebody off and they see that right before I punch him in the fucking mouth. I'm like, okay, that's cool, but, you know, when somebody needs a punch in the mouth, that's great. But now, you know, saying this, as a retired operator, as a guy that's getting on the mats like 4, 5, 6 times a week, I'm still going to be the guy that says, you know, maybe like violence isn't your first go-to to get what you want, right? Maybe this isn't the best way to do things. But what you see throughout, pervasive in that entire culture, man, is it's self-destruct, dude. That's all it is self-fucking-destruct. And all I could think, man, is that, like, this is not happening by fucking accident. And I'll tell you why. Because when I was growing up also, I was around the biker culture a little bit. And I saw, like, looking back, you could see it. You can't see it when you're up to your fucking eyes in it. But looking back, I could see it. And there's this self-destruct thing to it. And I feel like the way that it works is, like, you start noticing that something ain't right. Like, bro, I feel like I'm being lied to. I feel like so much of my life is just bullshit. Like, all the things I was taught to value were lies. Everything that I base my efforts on is lies. The people I was supposed to look up to were lying to me. I can't tell if they were part of it or not. All of these things are so fucked up, and I feel like I'm fucking failing. And instead of saying, well, what's the truth, dude? How can I move ahead? How can I create a vision for myself and make myself the man I want to be, make the world around me the world that I think it can be? How can I do these things? Instead of that, there's this vibe that, like, well, yeah, bro, the system is fucked, so whatever the system says, you got to just do the opposite. So within the biker culture, you would see like this shit of, like, you got to set your riding pants. I remember guys had, like, your road name, and that's, like, whatever your little fucking nickname is, like your little gangster name, fucking T-Bone or this kind of shit. You got your road name, and you got your riding pants that are like, no, you don't wash these, bro. They're just nasty and dirty and greasy and all fucked up. They say don't take drugs. You take drugs, bro. They say don't drink and drive. Bro, I drink and fucking ride, bro. Anybody could do this shit sober, bro. I have beer on my fucking cereal, bro. I have beer for fucking breakfast, bro. Because I don't fucking do how you do, bro. I'm not working no straight job, bro. Because I'm living the life, what they call the life. And this is the biker scene now, but this is what they call the life, man. So this is about, it's like the gangster thing, like you see in a mafia type movie. I don't have no fucking job. Dude, I get out here and I get shit. I either get by with less or I figure out how to get for nothing. I take from weak people. I exploit weak people. I sell stolen shit. I sell drugs, whatever the fuck it is. But I'm not working no straight job. I will not fucking do it. Why? Because it's part of the system. And fuck the system. Okay, well, kind of inherent to that thinking, though, what was a fucking trip is the dudes that I knew that were part of that, they're like, you know what, man, I got into this thing because I just wanted to ride bikes and chase ass, and now I'm living by more rules and more regulations and more mandatory meetings and things I gotta fucking do absolutely or catch a fucking beating than I ever would have as a regular person. And yeah, granted, they've got some benefits where they hold each other to a code. They, hold each other accountable. They're always looking out for each other. That's all fantastic shit. But you as a man, you making yourself the man you think you could be, you making the world around you the way that you think it could turn out, how's that fucking going? Again, fucking lobster trap, man. This ends one fucking way. This ends with you ODing. This ends with you getting stabbed in a fucking bar fight. This ends with you trying to ride after being awake for 3 days and you run out of fucking speed and you nod off and fucking bail. That's how this fucking ends, man. Is that tragic? It's tragic if you don't see it coming. But to the people who put this shit together, to the people who are making them biker movies, these people that are glorifying this kind of shit, to them, it's not fucking tragic. And I think it's the same thing with this 1.0 thing, man. That, like, a guy could look around, an otherwise smart guy could look around and say, something's not fucking right, dude. Something's not sitting right with me. And now here's this band that's been pushed. Here's this movie. Here's this scene. Here's this venue. Whatever, the fucking... whatever fucking music venue that's like, yeah, man, we put on punk shows here, it's cool, I have a thing with the cops. Well, who owns that fucking place? Jerry fucking Goldstein or whatever the fuck. And why is he so cool with this? Because the money keeps coming in and it keeps you motherfuckers out of trouble. You get drunk, you beat the shit out of each other, I don't give a fuck, right? And what sucks, man, is one, otherwise smart people get sucked into this shit, and instead of making an improvement to yourself or the world around you, you just fucking spiral and you fucking tank and you're fucking nobody. And where maybe you could have, in spite of the situation, met some woman, found some job, cobble together a life, have yourself a family, do the best you fucking can. Set a fucking example. Instead of doing that, what do? You spiral and fucking fail. Whose fucking interest does that serve, right? But so this guy is talking about this shit, man, and he's talking about the fucking violence, the fucking drug use, the boozing, all this kind of thing. And he goes on to talk about, what he talks about, the symbolism, and he's talking about, some of the Nordic runes kind of shit, and whatever, okay, cool. I know that some cats use that. The 1.0 dudes are really big on that. The Odinist dudes are really big on that. Whatever, dude. I'll say that pretty much any in-group, they'll have their symbols. They'll have their little logos. Within the Spec Ops thing, we had a lot of that kind of shit. Lots of that kind of shit. And we used to make jokes about, like, dude, I want to put together a t-shirt that'll have like a little Rolex crown and then like the logo for Copenhagen or something, and you could wear it and some dude will see it and be like, oh, I know who you are, Like, you'll have all this kind of shit that doesn't mean anything to anybody else, but to you it means something. Every organization has this, dude. Every organization has this kind of thing. But with this, it's the guy paints it as like, oh, this fucking insidious thing is like a secret language that we have that you don't understand. I'm like, what the fuck ever, guy. But probably my favorite here was, I had a couple highlights from this thing. My, I guess, second favorite was this guy talking about how he recruited. And he's talking about recruiting. And he says specifically, I had to concoct these stories about how white people are oppressed. So for one, to say that shit at the time, this is already fucking silly. All right, I mean, the 80s, 90s, and this kind of shit, you didn't have to look too fucking far. I mean, I even noticed it then. That like even in the 90s, in the 80s even, late 80s, if you said somebody was like, dude, you're so white, like this means like you're square, you have no imagination, you're just Mr. Clock Punch, you're not aggressive, you're not anything. And it's an insult. It's a fucking insult, right? So if like a woman said like, I can't, and I've heard of women saying this, they're like, I can't date you, you're just too white for me. Like, you just have no flavor, man. You have no style. You're like dating my brother. Oh, this is fucking lame, and you just had to kind of gut it out. People would just take that shit as like an insult, right? Like, yeah, okay, it is what it is. I'm just not her sort, She's into that real cool, that hip black fella there. Well, he's really something. He drives this car that scrapes on the ground when he goes down the street. It's really something. It's really something. It's an interesting, fascinating behavior. But he's talking about this shit, this Arno guy on this, this Dixie Hammerskin thing. And he's talking about, I had to make shit up basically and convince these people that they had a reason to be angry. I think we could all pretty much safely look around now and say, no, you were right, dude. You were right the first time, even if you didn't know you're right. Even if you're right without knowing why, I guess in a way you're still technically right? But the other thing, I guess, that really caught my attention and I think sort of lends to future discussion is the idea that he's talking about, there weren't many women in the movement. And that kind of created a situation where there would be like one alpha kind of guy in the pack, in the group. And he would have a woman, maybe 2 or 3 guys would have a woman. Everybody else, they don't have shit. And this guy really, honest to God, reduced it to like, these guys are here because they just can't get a girlfriend. They're frustrated. They're angry. You just can't get laid. That's what it is. I mean, in some ways, that's what I guess I wanted to get at, is that in some ways, wherever there's a dissident movement, wherever there is an outlier group, there will naturally be, I think, somebody, and I've said this before, somebody that is just kind of an inherent fuck up. Like a dude that, like, you're just all fucked up. That's your problem. All right. But the reason you don't fit in with society, or the reason you feel ostracized, or the problems that you're spotting, it's not the same, dude. I think if you're like, you're a college graduate, you're in real good shape, you're well-spoken, you're socially calibrated, you don't shit your pants in public, right? You take care of your personal hygiene, but somehow You still feel a little bit pushed aside, and you can't quite understand why it is literally impossible for you to find a job when Shaniqua and, her considerable case of BO and her clicky click nails are trying to decide between 3 different jobs that are going to pay twice what anything you were looking at was going to offer. All right? To feel like that, you wouldn't be wrong. Like, yeah, dude, I feel like I'm being fucked with here. Yeah, you're right. You are being fucked with. This guy over here that doesn't understand when to fucking shower is weighing in at, $3 and hasn't seen the inside of a gym outside of a brochure, right? This guy is a fucking catastrophe. Can't spell his own fucking name. That guy feels ostracized because he should be ostracized, not because he's a white nationalist. So there's a difference there. But I think what happens is these cats like this Arno fucking guy, they got no problem saying like, well, yeah, this, and hey, and this ain't exclusive to our fucking thing, neither. All right, this is any fucking group. Like there can be some cat that rolls in like, hey, bro, I'm just like you guys. Like, you're not, dude. You're kind of a slip knot. Like you want to be here because you don't fit in anywhere else, and you're hoping maybe it works here. But no, you don't fit in here either because you're finding kind of a fucking goon, right? So this ain't exclusive to us. But what I think this guy is doing, though, and I have no doubt he had help with this fucking script, is to say that, like, yeah, this whole way of thinking, this whole thing is just the spawn of losers, the spawn of outcasts. And I guess to kind of address that, I'll point to the women, dude. Because I'll tell you what, just like bars or nightclubs, women do not congregate to things that have no fucking... Like, it's instinctual with them. Like, if you're a fucking zero, if you're going fucking nowhere, you're no goddamn fun, they ain't fucking showing up. All right? But what I do see increasingly with our thing is that, like, the quality of dude that comes into this thing, the quality of dude that starts seeing this ideology and is like... Yeah, dude, it's gone too far, man. Something needs to be done. We need to start taking a different perspective. We need to make this fucking work properly. The quality of man that's arriving here is the sort of quality of man that attracts quality women. So you do see increasingly these kind of women that are standing up saying, well, no, man, I was talking to this guy and he's telling me. Like, no, white people should have a home country just like everybody else. Good-looking women who have no real reason to, like they could get by anywhere. But the problem is becoming so blatant that it's picking up steam and it has a future, it has merit, and that is something that women recognize. So, for all their faults, that is something women are good for. They recognize merit where it can be found. And looking at the guys who do get involved in our thing, increasingly you see, I think that it's not dudes that are like losers and incels and I got nowhere else to go and nobody cares about me, nobody listens to me, none of this shit. Like increasingly it's dudes who have families, it's dudes who have kids, it's dudes who have, they have their own personal history of trying to make something of themselves in a society that says, oh yeah, bro, diversity, just be cool to everybody else, bro, and they'll all be cool to you. And then what they found out was that, like, yeah, dude, guess what? We're whistling you right out of this gene pool. We're going to take everything you have to offer. We're not going to give you anything. And fuck you. And they make something in spite of themselves. But what they want is they want a better world for their kids, for their grandkids, for the people just like them who are having a hard time. They want to be able to offer something. It's like, yeah, man, this is bullshit, man. I don't want you to have to go through what I went through. Which is, again, a very white trait, but something, in the increasingly diverse military and dudes who've been there, I know you know this fucking story where it's like, yeah, you're missing Christmas. Yeah, you're missing, your kid's birthday. Or, yeah, you're not going to be there for whatever the fuck. You're not going to be there because I wasn't there. You know how many Christmases and Thanksgivings is and this shit I missed? Like, that's, dude, if there was some kind of bylaw for senior leadership in the military, I think it would probably include that. It's like an unwritten code or some kind of thing of like, yeah, I got fucked over, so now I'm going to fuck you over. But to the decent white man, right, the directive is more like, yeah, I had to go through this shit, but I'm going to spare you that pain. Like you would to anybody you give a shit about. Like you look at somebody and you kind of see a little bit of yourself in them and you say, man, I'm going to spare someone like you, who's someone like me, I'm going to spare you this pain, man. So let's fucking make this thing right. But bouncing over to this this Joe Rogan deal, man. I was listening to this interview with this Daryl Cooper guy, who I had more or less heard of before, but I guess he does these extended history type podcasts. And he had him on there, man. And I guess this guy's deal is that he kind of takes the perspective of whatever almost antagonistic character, is at issue. So I guess he did one about Jonestown, and he goes way down the rabbit hole, I guess, does a lot of research. Again, according to him, I haven't listened to this fucking guy. He could be anybody. But according to him, does a lot of research, goes way down the rabbit hole, tries to take their perspective, and sort of almost offer a sympathetic approach that's like, look, man, they're making these decisions in the heat of the moment with incomplete information and this kind of shit. So, of course, they start talking about World War II. And once again, all the disclaimers come out, man. Like, we're not talking about racialists, and we're not talking, those guys are crazy, those guys are nuts. People are like, I don't know, anti-Semitic. But what I think is interesting, the big thing I think is interesting is that, like we all know, the reason you're not allowed to talk about any of this stuff is because as soon as you talk about it at all, you start looking at the facts and you're going to start seeing the coincidences. You're going to start seeing the pattern, and you're going to arrive at the conclusion that, like, yeah, maybe these guys weren't so bad after all. Maybe these guys were onto something. Maybe they ain't so fucking stupid. Why don't I take another look? So that's why it's illegal to talk about these things in a lot of countries. And the guy even says on his podcast, like, look, I'm not a National Socialist. I'm not a racialist. Like he says, like, just plain and simple, like, I'm not any of these things. But there's still a bunch of countries I probably shouldn't go to because I won't be allowed off the plane. So I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, how long is it going to take you to put two and two together? And some people it takes a little while, I think. But, listening to this guy talk, they're talking about this shit. He's talking about, what did he get onto? They got on to discussing early America and the difference in, American identity, bunny ears identity versus like a German identity or a European identity. And he started to address the Immigration Act of 17, mistakenly called it 1798. I believe it's 1791. But started to mention that as something that, according to him, racists will use to say that, look, America was founded as a white country for white people. And it was, for ourselves and our posterity. I don't know how much more simply you can state that. And then the Joe Hogan jumps in and he's talking about, well, they had to open the doors to immigration because there just weren't enough people to populate all this land, and it would have just collapsed, and because look at the size of America. And I'm like, well, look, so this is kind of where I'm getting to down the road with this, I think, is that when these people deny reality for so long, like, the mental gymnastics become increasingly complex, and eventually it gets to a point where you're conflating the geographical size of the U.S. as you know it today with the population of 1791, and saying, well, why is it such a big fucking deal if you open the door to, Somalis, Muslims, etc. But we'll come to that. So he's talking about this, and then they're talking about some of this business. They're talking about, well, how could you sit across the table? And he said, like, gives this specific example. How could you sit across the table, and on the other side of the table is a guy from, some third world war-torn country with his two kids, and he's asking to come in. How are you going to deny him? How are you going to say, no, you can't come in? How would you even do that? You can't come into my country. You can't be here. And my thing on this is this, man, that especially as white people, we're always talking about, like, bro, I'll get by. I can hack it. I can do it. I can make do with a little less. I can survive. I can, on and fucking on. We'll always gut it out. All right. And that's one, I think, what's so fucked up about the way that white people are portrayed is that, we're out here looking to exploit. We're looking to take advantage. Dude, we're the ones hooking motherfuckers up. We're always the ones that are like, oh, you don't have something? Here, take a little of what I have. because I can get by, you know, on a little bit less. I can tighten my belt, and then I can gut it out, and I'll figure out a way, you know, so we all make do. This is a very white trait. But this guy is talking about, well, you know, how can I sit across from this guy and tell him that he can't come into my country? And my thing is that, dude, I'm not saying you can't come into my country. I'm not worried about you coming into my country, coming into my workplace. I'm worried about you. How can I look at another American who's struggling to get by and say, yeah, I'm going to let this guy in. He's going to work with you. How am I going to say to the guy, hoping that he can get enough hours to keep the rent paid, say to him, yeah, you're going to actually get your hours cut because I'm welcoming this guy and his family? How am I going to say to your kid, somebody else's kid, that like, yeah, I don't have kids in this school and you do, but I'm going to let this Somali family in, and maybe your daughter gets raped, maybe she doesn't. I don't know. It's a chance I'm willing to take. It's not about fucking me, dude. It's about who do you give a shit about. And the trouble with this is that these people have been robbed of their racial identity, where they're not willing to say, these people, they share a genetic proximity to me. They are very much connected to me in a way that these Somalians are not. And to say that, like, look, man, I'm not letting these motherfuckers in here because I'm not going to do this to somebody who's just like me. So now they do caveat and say that, you know, he does say that, like, yeah, I don't want to say no to this guy with his kids. But then I look past him and I see 67,000 other people all waiting to come in as well. Okay, well, that's fucking fine, dude. But I guess here's the thing is that, you know, these guys are talking about, you know, ham-fistedly anyway, they're talking about this concept called goodness of fit. And this is like an industrial psychological term, you know, when you're talking about, like, how do I pick the right people for this workplace and so on. And you want people that are going to work well together, that are going to fit in well together. And on one hand, I want to say that, yeah, it is a strong point that, yeah, no, you can't just let every Somalian and every Nigerian and every Chinese guy into the country, because it's going to change the makeup of the place, and you're not going to have a country no more. You're going to have, like, just a fucking Amazon warehouse, and that's fucking bullshit. But moreover, what I'm going to say is that you don't need a fucking reason. Just like you don't need a reason to tell somebody, no, you can't live at my house. China doesn't need a reason to tell a bunch of Nigerians, no, you can't come in. And it's not because you're Nigerian. It's not because goodness of fit. It's not because criminal tendency. It's not because of any of that shit. It's because it's my fucking country. It's my place. It's not your place. This is my society, not your society. It's my culture. It's not your culture. It's not our culture. It's fucking mine. So just like a house, man. Somebody knocks on your door and is like, hey, man, you mind if I set up shop here? Fuck yeah, I mind. It's my fucking house. I built this fucking thing. Or, you know, even you didn't build it. You didn't, oh, did you personally build it? Or so some Mexicans actually built it, bro. I don't give a shit. It belongs to me. So you say, I want to come in here. I want to set up shop. I want to live here. I live in a shithole, man. You want my kids to grow up in a shithole? Dude, your kids ain't my fucking problem, man. None of that shit is my fucking concern. My concern is my family, is my people, is my own well-being, my posterity. Yes? So it's not your house. It's not your place. It's not your stuff. And this idea that somehow you owe somebody something simply because their life sucks a little bit more than yours, well, what you see then is that this incentivizes having a sucky life. So if you can present as a little bit worse off, a little bit weaker, a little bit stupider, a little bit less resourceful, well, this is actually to your advantage then. And you see this again and again and again. They're like, oh, bro, you don't know how bad I have it. I need help. I need assistance. I need aid. I need funding. I need this, that, and the other. And, bro, if you can just figure out a way to make less money over here, like, dude, what the fuck is the deal with incentivizing weakness and stupidity? I mean, it is fucking rampant, but that's where we are, man, is that if you can come across as the weakest fucking link, then you're going to get the easiest fucking route. But speaking of easy route, man, I guess that was something I kind of wanted to wrap up, like, overall with this, to kind of drive the point home. I've mentioned this before when I was talking about the deal with interrogations, both in terms of conducting interrogations and surviving interrogations, that a lot of this, the principle of this, revolves around the idea that a guy is going to do the simplest possible thing. So a guy interrogating you, for instance, is going to look at you and say, what's the easiest way to get this guy to talk? Is it to come in here and stroke his ego? Is it to get in his ass? Is it to beat him with a phone book? What is it? Give him money, to get information out of this guy. What's the easiest fucking path? And like when I was doing interrogations, my thinking was always, I'm asking this guy, like, whose house is this? Who's this guy? Who's the fucking guy in the tracksuit? Where'd you get this AK or whatever the fuck, right? I got to bear in mind that this guy is going to be looking for the easiest path. So easiest path to what? Easiest path to get me to leave him the fuck alone and he can get back to his life. So the thing here then is the easiest path. If that is to absolutely stonewall, because if he gives me anything, he's going to be fucked. Or if the easiest path is, yeah, look, dude, here's my, whatever. A lot of them don't have ID, but here's my paperwork. I'll give you everybody's names here. That's my kid. He lives here. That's my wife. She lives here. Why do I have that AK? It was my father's AK, and I'm allowed to have an AK here. What the fuck's a big fucking deal? All right, shit, dude. This is the easiest path to him getting me the fuck out of his house. So that's the path he's going to take. Now, like, I want to caveat here, like, you see these videos of, like, people fucking with the police and, like, pulling up to a checkpoint or something and, like, rolling down the window 1 inch and, like, am I being detained? Am I being detained? And, like, they're like, dude, what the fuck? Like, you're just trying to stop people from driving fucked up. And, I realize, this is a whole other discussion. There's some nuance involved. There's, some bullshit involved. I think the cop thing, like we've talked about that before, man, that's it's a sticky wicket because I think there are people that are trying to keep the ship afloat, which is dodgy because the ship is designed to sink, for one, and two, the ship is already, for the most part, sunk. So there are some people that are trying to keep it afloat, perhaps, but there's also a lot of guys that are just trying to steal some of the good silverware on the way to the bottom of the ocean. So that's, a different cop question entirely. But when we're talking about just that thing of pulling up to checkpoints and like, am I being detained? Am I being detained? Those guys are not trying to be left alone, trying to get down the road on their own. If they were, the simplest course of action would be, no, I haven't been drinking. I'm coming from fucking Chili's where I ate 3 hot dogs and I had a lemonade. I haven't been drinking. I'm not drunk now. I'm just going home. I live right there. Cool? Yeah, okay, cool. That's it. But they're not trying to do that. They're trying to make a video. They're trying to start shit. They're trying to make somebody's life hard. So that is not, a situation where you're taking the shortest path. If you did do something, fucked up, like you went to fucking Chili's and you got shithoused and you're driving home and you're fucking swerving and now there's a checkpoint, the quickest way to get left alone in that situation might be to roll the window down 1 inch, maybe set your phone up and like, am I being detained? Am I being detained? And they're like, man, just get the fuck out of here. I'm not doing this shit right now. Whew, close one. Because if you roll that window down, you're going inside, dude. You're going to be fucked because you smell like fucking apple teenies, right? And we don't want that. So in that case, it would be the quickest way to get left alone. But looking at these two situations, man, this kind of begs the question about what are the simple ways being taken here. So for fucking Arno, the simplest way to have a semi-productive, semi-useful life, what is the simplest way? Is it to go back through all of the shit that you half learned or the ideas that you learned wrong? Because obviously, like, I don't know that you could even call this guy a bunny ears Nazi. You sure as shit couldn't call him a National Socialist, because if he was, he wouldn't ever be out just beating up random people for the fuck of it. He wouldn't be getting shithoused. He'd be making something of himself. He'd be doing his damnedest to becoming a quality man and finding a woman and having some kids. Was he doing any of that? No, obviously not. So what's the simple answer? Is it to go back and unlearn and relearn all the shit that you fucked up the first time and try to find footing in the dissident movement as it stands now? Or is it just to say, man, fuck all this. I'm just going to try to keep the rent paid and make my way down the road. And if I can get some good goy brownie points by making a video about how I'm not a 1.0 Nazi no more, then probably that's pretty easy too, man. That might help me get some kind of a job. Maybe I get a speaking gig, and I ain't saying don't be proud of being white. I'm just saying, don't be a drunk skinhead punk. Oh, hey, that rhymes. That's great. Anyway, for Arno, that probably is the easiest course of action. Because Arno ain't fucking spry. Arno ain't fucking 25 no more. Arno ain't got a lot of options. There's not a big long list of shit Arno can still get qualled on, you know, and use to get out there and find gainful employment and bring home $1.01. It ain't really happening for Arno, right? So this is probably his easiest course of action. For Joe and his interviewees, what I find really interesting here is taking this same perspective. What about what you're doing is the easiest way? So I think explaining, you know, the JQ from the perspective of 1930s, 40s Germany in the most, you know, how could I say this, man? Like, this shit got filtered, right? Like, somebody had to sign off on this. Like, Joe can fucking say all he goddamn wants. They're like, bro, I do whatever I fucking want. Bro, I do whatever fucking I want, bro. I put on whatever fuck I want on my fucking show, bro. It's crazy. It's crazy. I do what I want, bro. I don't fucking believe that for a second. I believe that guy has a fucking producer. I believe that guy has a person or people that look at who he's going to have on and what they're going to talk about, and then gets either the nod or maybe, you know, this guy doesn't have any say at all in terms of who shows up. It's just, hey, here's who you're going to talk to tomorrow. I don't fucking know, but I am very willing to bet that that is the case. So if this is the guy that he has on, and this is the way that they're talking about 20s, 30s, 40s, Germany and German politics, then what is this the easiest route to? What is the compromise here? How is this the decision being made? Well, I'll tell you what I think that decision is. That decision is, this is the easiest way we keep this fucking cat in the bag. All this other shit is off the table. Straight denying it has gone to shit. Like the fucking Cookie Monster argument is, I mean, it's child's play at this point, dude. Like, if you'd let go of the fucking gas chamber story, maybe, you know, and you'd flex on the numbers, maybe you could keep this thing afloat. But you won't fucking do it. And you've blown yourself out of this fucking argument. So that's out of the fucking water. Shifting blame to somebody else, no. The making fun of people thing, it worked for a little while, but now it's just stupid because we're better at it than they are. And real quick, I think that's something that needs to be said, that this is a very, very effective Hebrew method of arguing. And you could say it's sort of like the straw man thing. You could say it's sort of like the ad hominem thing. But it's this flippancy thing. And even C.S. Lewis wrote about this idea of flippancy, that where somebody has something that they really give a shit about. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, man. It could be politics, it could be religion, it could be fucking model airplanes. But for whatever reason, this is something that this person, whoever it is, really, really gives a shit about. If you want to cut that person down to size, you don't need to come in and argue about, well, no, like, here are the holes in your religion, and here's where dates don't line up, and here's conflation of ideas, and here's where a lot of these philosophies actually oppose each other. And people will say that, like, they'll argue that about Islam, and they'll say that about the Talmud, and they'll point out specific verses, and that has merit with some people that are inclined to think that way. But when you just roll in and just make fucking fun, like, oh, look at you worshiping your little fucking god with an elephant head. Okay, hey, I was at the zoo. I think I saw your god there. I threw some peanuts to your god. Oh, my Lord, what? You know, that then you're not making a bunny ears valid argument, but you're cutting these motherfuckers down to size on something that to them is very fucking important. So as an example, you saw this technique used by Jon Stewart. Right, way back in the day, and I don't know if you remember this, but this was when he was doing the Daily Show, and before that, South African basketballer was doing it. It used to be done by Jon Stewart, aka John Leibowitz, and it was always very leftist tilted, and he would take his very Jewish perspective on everything. But he ended up on, I want to say it was Fox News. Maybe it was some different news outlet. I think it was Fox News, though. And they're kind of going back and forth on this thing. And finally, Jon Stewart is like, do you know how ridiculous you sound? You're arguing with me? I'm not serious. I'm not a serious person. I host a show that follows a puppet show. So instead of arguing seriously in terms of like, look, this is the merits of the argument. Here are my points. Here's where I think you're missing the boat on this. No, he just makes fun of the person. And worst of all, he makes fun of them for arguing with him because he's just some dope who hosts a show that comes after a puppet show. And it was at whatever, it was like Crank Callers or something, where they have crank calls, but they have puppets doing it, so you have something to look at. So this kind of cutting someone down to size with like, dude, how fucking stupid are you? This is corny. It's totally cornball. This is something that's extremely effective, and you see this again and again. You definitely see it against us. Like the thing with like, oh, you know, your favorite uncle, he had one ball. You know, I heard he was a homosexual. I heard he was actually secretly Jewish, and like his mom was banging a Jewish guy, and also his wife, and it's just like the constant, you know, it's crazy, I guess, because they'll manage to wear both hats at once. Where like it's a serious threat, it's a serious thing, oh my God, never again, and this kind of shit. But at the same time, they're going to take this flippant approach and like, you're so silly, I don't even know where the fuck to start. So looking at this, bouncing back to the Joe Rogan thing, what is this the simplest fucking route to? You tried all this shit, and now you've arrived at, okay, we have to talk about it, we have to address it, but we have to say that like, yeah, there were some things, heat of the moment, and bad decisions were made, and people got suckered into it, and maybe it was influenced by his early life and PTSD and everything they saw during World War I and trench warfare and all this kind of shit. That is where we're fucking at, man. And I will tell you this, it is mightily encouraging that for so long that, I mean, how many times, dude? How many times have you been canceled? I don't know how many times I've been canceled. I want to say I know how many, but I have no idea how many times I've tried to log on to some account or other, and I've got, yeah, there was an error. Why don't you give us your phone number? And then you come up with like some Google phone number or, you know, some other secret squirrel phone number, and it's like, okay, thanks. Yeah, if we work it out, we'll email you and let you know. And like, yeah, you're never getting into that account again, dude. So, I mean, how many times? And I mean, I ain't no fucking big name. I ain't big fucking anything. And to just get crushed. They're like, yeah, you're not talking anymore. We're not going to have you talking anymore. And not for like, I'm not singling people out. I'm not hunting anybody down. Well, except maybe like the Holocaust Museum. I did get blocked by them one. I was pretty fucking proud of that. I was stoked. But apart from that, I mean, I'm not logging on to anything and like, hey, let's see what this guy's doing. And let's pick on him for a while. I don't got to do that. I can just say what I think. You know, and you, I'm sure the same thing. How many times did you do that? And then like, yeah, you're quiet now. You aren't saying anything else. No one's ever going to hear you again. Not on this account anyway. But now we're past that. And where are we now? Okay, we got to be willing to discuss some of this to some degree. Otherwise, it's only going to get worse. This is the better option. This is the easiest route. So to that end, man, I will say I'm encouraged. And what I think will be interesting is cats like, honestly, like Joe Rogan. You know, the more you know, and we've seen it from so many different avenues, from the pickup artist avenue to the biodiversity avenue, the libertarian avenue, the conspiracy theorist avenue. The more information you get, the more patterns you recognize, the quicker you start arriving at this JQ situation, and you're like, you know, you motherfuckers, it keeps coming up. I keep seeing your names. You know, and it was funny because this guy that he's interviewing, I can't remember the guy's fucking name now, Doug, whatever the fuck is this Joe Rogan interview. The guy's saying like, yeah, you know, it's crazy. Some guys that I talk to, they get onto this thing, you know, with Jews, and it becomes a guy that you can't bring to a party no more. Like, they get in there and they just fucking start and they won't fucking stop. And I'll tell you, dude, it's like, well, why would you? You know, when you see enough fucking patterns, It's like your friend that, like, he's got some girlfriend that's robbing him fucking blind. You know, like every time the guy shows up, he's like, yeah, I couldn't find my watch, so I'm wearing this. I just picked it up at a gas station. Yeah, my good shoes, or I don't know. I found a receipt for a secondhand place. I don't know what's going on. My bank account seems a little short. I went to pay for dinner with my credit card, and they said it was declined. I got to figure out what's going on. Yeah, my car got stolen, I guess, and it's crazy. You know, I put my girlfriend on the title, you know, just in case, you know, she said, like, if there was an emergency or something, or if she got stopped by the cops, she says, I don't know. But it's like all these little things, they keep adding up, and you're going, dude, you're being fucking robbed. Like, help me fucking help you. And they're like, man, why don't you shut up? I think you're just jealous because me and you don't hang out as much as we did before I got together with her. Dude, it's not that. Look at the fucking evidence, man. So this guy, you know, I think this kind of thing is interesting because I think only one of two things can really possibly happen, that you keep seeing the patterns. You keep seeing the coincidences. You keep seeing the evidence. And either at some point, you got to come to terms with it, or you got to start coming up with some of the most wazoo fucking mental gymnastic explanations that anybody's ever heard of. And I honestly think that this is where some of this stuff like a Q or lizard people or some of this kind of shit honestly comes from. Because once again, the easy way, if you don't want to become that person, if you don't want to become part of that element, part of that problem, that is, according to everything you've heard since third grade, the worst possible thing that you can be. If you don't want to become that, maybe it's lizard people. You can hold out hope. Maybe it's fucking lizard people, bro. Maybe it's not actually this small international clique that's been doing this shit for 2,000 fucking years and has been kicked out of so many places so many times, always for the same shit and always the same little rumors that follow them wherever they go, even across centuries between people who had no way of ever meeting, let alone communicating with each other. It's always the same fucking stories of corruption and usury and child sacrifice and instigating wars and just always fucking something, the same fucking people. Maybe it's not that, maybe it's lizard people, and I'm not such a horrible person just yet. But once that comes and passes, man, and you're up against it. So I think it will be quite something to watch. It's pretty fucking wild, man. It's pretty fucking wild watching somebody from where we are to look at somebody like that and watch it happen. Like, which way is it going to go? It's fucking wild. But I am inclined to think that even if like a Joe Rogan or his guests of this variety, you know, even like Ian Carroll, even if they don't go that direction, I think it will still be interesting to see the number of people who do, because I do think there will be a lot. There's not really a way to avoid it at this point. So with that in mind, I think that's about as much as I can stand, and I'm sure you've had your fill. So if you want to hassle me, man, you can find me on the gram at niceguy.coffee, or you could find me on the Telegram at t.me/theabusehour, or in the associated chat at t.me/rantroom. But until next time, man, I don't know what we'll talk about next time, but we shall see. But until that time comes, keep your eyes on the horizon, keep your neck out of the noose. I have been Coffee. These are my takes.